A shipyard in China just revealed something the Pentagon didn't see coming. No smokestacks, no fuel tanks, and a size that dwarfs America's most advanced warship. What Beijing is building in secret could end 80 years of American naval supremacy, and they're building two of them at once. The year is 2024, and something extraordinary is taking shape along China's eastern coastline. For months, satellite imagery has captured the unmistakable outline of a vessel so massive, so technically ambitious, that defense analysts around the world are calling it impossible. Yet there it sits, rising from the construction yards like a steel leviathan, challenging everything we thought we knew about naval power and technological timelines. This isn't just another aircraft carrier. This is China's Type 004. A nuclear-powered supercarrier that could fundamentally alter the balance of military power across the world's oceans. And if the intelligence is accurate, Beijing isn't stopping at one. They're building two simultaneously, a feat that even the United States, with its century of carrier experience, has rarely attempted. But here's what makes this story truly remarkable. Just 12 years ago, China didn't have a single operational aircraft carrier. Not one. Today, they're on the verge of joining an exclusive club that only two nations have ever entered, the realm of nuclear-powered carrier operations. The question isn't whether this is happening anymore. The question is how they pulled it off so quickly, and what it means for the future of global security. The doubt, the denial, and the discovery. Rewind to 2023. Rumors begin circulating in defense circles about a fourth Chinese aircraft carrier under construction. The whispers suggest something unprecedented: nuclear propulsion. Immediately, skepticism floods the conversation. Western naval experts dismiss it as propaganda. Even Chinese military enthusiasts shake their heads in disbelief. The logic seems sound. Conventional wisdom says you can't leapfrog decades of technological development. You certainly can't compress 40 years of American nuclear carrier evolution into less than 2 decades. The United States commissioned its first conventional carrier in 1922. It took 38 years, nearly 4 decades of engineering trials, operational experience, and incremental innovation, before the USS Enterprise, the world's first nuclear-powered carrier, slid into the water in 1960. China, by contrast, only commissioned its first carrier, the Liaoning, in 2012. That vessel wasn't even built from scratch. It was a refurbished Soviet-era hull purchased from Ukraine and modernized for Chinese service. By 2017, China launched the Shandong, its first domestically built carrier. 5 years later, in 2022, came the Fujian, an electromagnetic, catapult-equipped beast that signaled China's rapid technological maturation. But all three carriers shared one crucial characteristic: conventional propulsion. They ran on fuel oil, required regular refueling, and faced the same logistical constraints that have limited naval operations since the age of coal-powered battleships. So when intelligence reports suggested China would jump directly to nuclear propulsion for its fourth carrier, the reaction was predictable. Too fast, too ambitious, simply not credible. Then the evidence started piling up. Satellites don't lie. The photographic proof. The first cracks in the skepticism appeared in early 2024. Commercial satellite imagery, now accessible to defense analysts and open-source intelligence researchers alike, captured something undeniable at a Chinese shipyard. The structure was enormous, comparable in size to the USS Gerald R. Ford, America's newest and most technologically advanced carrier. Analysts pored over the images, measuring dimensions, calculating displacement estimates. The numbers that emerged were staggering. Length approximately 335 meters. Width roughly 83 meters. Potential displacement 115,000 tons. If accurate, this vessel would actually exceed the Ford-class carrier's 112,000-ton displacement, making it the largest aircraft carrier ever constructed. But size alone wasn't the shocking part. It was what the structure lacked. American media outlets began reporting on a separate but related development. Chinese engineers were testing a massive ship-based nuclear reactor. The specifications leaked to Western intelligence painted a picture of serious intent. 10 meters in diameter, 15 meters in height. Output capacity of 125 megawatts. 25 megawatts more powerful than the reactors aboard America's Nimitz-class carriers. Every technical parameter matched the requirements for powering a supercarrier. This wasn't theoretical research. This was hardware designed for operational deployment. Then came the model. By late 2024, a Chinese shipbuilding corporation did something unexpected. They publicly displayed a scale model of what appeared to be the Type 004 carrier. To the trained eye, one detail stood out immediately. There was no smokestack, no exhaust system for burning fuel, no visible emissions infrastructure whatsoever. For naval architects, this single design feature answered every lingering question. Conventional carriers generate enormous amounts of exhaust that must be vented through large stacks. The absence of these structures on the model meant one thing and one thing only: nuclear propulsion. The dots connected rapidly after that. The reactor testing facility, the unprecedented displacement figures, the aggressive construction timeline that suggested work had begun as early as 2021. Suddenly, what seemed impossible became not just plausible, but probable. China was indeed building a nuclear-powered supercarrier, and they were doing it at a pace that defied conventional military development timelines. But understanding that it exists is only the beginning. The real question is, what makes this vessel so formidable? To grasp why nuclear propulsion represents such a monumental leap, you need to understand the fundamental limitations of conventional carriers. A fuel-powered carrier, no matter how well designed, can only travel about 22,000 kilometers on a full tank. That might sound like a lot, but in naval terms, it's a constraint that shapes every operational decision. Conventional carriers must constantly calculate fuel consumption. They need supply ships trailing them. They require frequent port visits or at-sea refueling operations. Every gallon of aviation fuel loaded aboard for aircraft operations means less space for ship propulsion fuel. It's a zero-sum game of logistics and endurance. Nuclear carriers obliterate these limitations. A nuclear-powered carrier, after refueling its reactor, can sail approximately 2 million kilometers before requiring another nuclear fuel load. Read that again? 2 million kilometers. That's the equivalent of circumnavigating the entire planet 50 times without stopping for fuel. In practical terms, it means a nuclear carrier can operate continuously for years. Not days, not months, but years, projecting power anywhere on Earth without logistical tethers to home ports or supply chains. This endurance translates into strategic freedom. A nuclear carrier battle group can position itself off any coastline and remain there indefinitely. It can respond to crises without waiting for fuel convoys. It can conduct sustained combat operations without the vulnerability window that comes during refueling. In military parlance, it becomes a mobile, sovereign territory, a floating airbase that carries a nation's power projection capabilities wherever it goes. The energy abundance from a nuclear reactor creates secondary advantages too. Conventional carriers must carefully ration electrical power. There's only so much generating capacity from diesel or gas turbine engines. Nuclear reactors produce massive electrical output beyond propulsion needs. This surplus energy can power advanced radar systems, electromagnetic catapults, directed energy weapons, and future technologies we can only imagine today. Based on intelligence assessments and satellite analysis, the Type 004 carrier appears to incorporate several cutting-edge systems that place it in direct competition with, or possibly ahead of, American naval technology. The electromagnetic catapult system is perhaps the most visible innovation. China already deployed this technology on the Fujian carrier, but the 004 reportedly features 4 catapults compared to the Fujian's 3. Electromagnetic launch systems represent a quantum leap over traditional steam catapults. They're more reliable, require less maintenance, can launch aircraft more rapidly, and cause less stress on airframes, extending the operational lifespan of expensive carrier-based fighters. The flight deck layout suggests sophisticated operational thinking. Satellite imagery indicates 3 aircraft elevators, 2 positioned on the starboard side forward of the island superstructure and 1 on the port side aft. This configuration allows simultaneous aircraft launching and recovery operations, dramatically increasing sortie rates during combat. More sorties per hour means more combat power delivered to the battlefield. The carrier can reportedly embark more than 80 aircraft, giving it an air wing comparable to American supercarriers. These would likely include the J-35 stealth fighter, China's answer to the F-35, and possibly even prototype 6th-generation aircraft like the recently revealed J-36. An air wing of this size provides defensive coverage, offensive strike capability, airborne early warning, electronic warfare, and anti-submarine warfare, all from a single platform. But the carrier doesn't operate alone. The battle group, multiplying the threat. Modern naval warfare revolves around integrated battle groups, not individual ships. The Type 004 will operate as the centerpiece of a formation that includes some of the most capable surface combatants on Earth. Chief among these is the Type 055 destroyer, a guided missile cruiser in all but name, displacing over 13,000 tons and bristling with advanced weapon systems. The 055 carries hypersonic anti-ship missiles with a reported range exceeding 1,500 kilometers. These weapons travel at multiple times the speed of sound, following unpredictable flight paths that make interception extraordinarily difficult. The combination is formidable. The carrier provides air superiority and strike capability within a 1,000-kilometer radius, while the escorts deliver long-range precision firepower that can threaten enemy carriers, surface action groups, and land targets far beyond visual range. Add in advanced anti-air warfare systems, anti-submarine capabilities, and electronic warfare suites, and you have a battle group that can control vast swathes of ocean. This isn't just about matching American capabilities anymore. In some respects, China appears to be innovating beyond them. The 125-megawatt reactor output exceeds the Nimitz-class standard. The electromagnetic catapults match Ford-class technology. The displacement potentially exceeds every carrier currently at sea. Beijing isn't catching up. They're competing at the cutting edge. The Pentagon's nightmare scenario. For 80 years, American naval supremacy has been unquestionable. 11 nuclear-powered carriers have given the United States the ability to project overwhelming force anywhere on the planet. No other nation came close. France operates a single nuclear carrier, the Charles de Gaulle, but with a displacement of only 42,000 tons, it operates in a different category entirely. This dominance shaped global geopolitics. American carriers enforced freedom of navigation, deterred aggression, enabled humanitarian missions, and served as the ultimate backstop for Allied security. The mere presence of a carrier battle group in a region could alter the strategic calculations of potential adversaries. China's carrier program changes this equation fundamentally. As of 2024, global carrier count stands at 30 vessels. The United States operates 11. China now has 3 in service, with the nuclear-powered Type 004 nearing completion. But intelligence reports suggest something even more significant. A 5th carrier, designated Type 005, has already begun construction at Shanghai's Jiangnan shipyard. China is building 2 nuclear supercarriers simultaneously. American media outlets, citing defense intelligence sources, project that by 2030, China could operate as many as 10 carriers with genuine blue-water combat capabilities. If this timeline holds, the global naval power structure will undergo its most dramatic transformation since World War II. The Western Pacific, long an American-dominated strategic space, would become a genuinely contested maritime theater. The implications extend beyond ship counts. American carrier operations have relied on decades of institutional knowledge, the complex choreography of flight operations, the logistics of sustained deployments, the integration of air wings with surface combatants. China is acquiring this knowledge at compressed speed, learning lessons in years that took the U.S. Navy generations to master. Why speed matters, the developmental leap. This is where the story becomes truly remarkable from a technological perspective. The United States needed nearly 4 decades to transition from conventional to nuclear carrier propulsion. France took a similar timeline for its single nuclear carrier. The United Kingdom, despite its long carrier history, ultimately abandoned nuclear propulsion for its new Queen Elizabeth-class carriers due to cost and complexity. China is achieving this transition in less than 20 years. How? The answer lies in a combination of factors that reveal much about modern great power competition. First, China has invested astronomical sums into its defense industrial base, creating shipbuilding capacity that now exceeds America's by several orders of magnitude. Chinese shipyards can construct vessels faster and often cheaper than their Western counterparts. Second, China benefits from what intelligence analysts call late mover advantage. They didn't have to invent nuclear propulsion or electromagnetic catapults from scratch. They could study American and French systems, learn from their successes and failures, and implement improved versions without the costs of pioneering research. Third, China's military modernization operates under a centralized strategic vision that prioritizes naval power. There's no debate in Beijing about whether carriers matter. There's no bureaucratic infighting over budget allocations between services. The Communist Party has decided that naval power serves national interests, and resources flow accordingly. The result is a developmental pace that would have seemed fantastical 2 decades ago. In 2004, China didn't operate a single carrier. By 2034, they may operate a carrier fleet rivaling America's in size and potentially surpassing it in average vessel age and technology. So, here's the thing. Naval power isn't just some abstract concept. It translates directly into geopolitical influence and real strategic options. Carriers, for example, enable power projection, which basically means having the ability to influence events far from your own borders, without having to rely on foreign bases or getting permission from allies. For China, this new capability serves a bunch of strategic objectives. First, it provides security for those vital sea lanes, the ones that carry the energy imports and trade flows the Chinese economy depends on. Second, it really enhances China's position in those ongoing territorial disputes in the South China Sea and the East China Sea. Third, it creates the capacity for sustained military operations beyond the so-called First Island chain, that geographic barrier formed by Japan, Taiwan, and the Philippines, which has historically held back Chinese naval power. But there's a fourth implication, and honestly, it's the one that worries American strategists the most. Carriers provide escalation dominance. In any regional crisis, the side with more carriers, more advanced carriers, or just better positioned carriers holds some significant military advantages. They can establish air superiority, conduct strikes, enforce blockades, and deter intervention by other powers. If China achieves numerical parity, or even near parity with American carrier forces in the Western Pacific by the 2030s, it fundamentally changes how crises play out. American military planning has long assumed that, say, in a Taiwan scenario, the U.S. could rapidly deploy multiple carrier battle groups to dominate the maritime space and establish air superiority. But if China can match or counter that deployment with its own carrier forces, the calculus becomes vastly more complex and, honestly, a lot more dangerous. Now, this doesn't guarantee conflict. In fact, evenly matched forces can sometimes create stability through mutual deterrence. But it does mean that the era of unchallenged American naval supremacy is ending. We're looking at a multipolar maritime world now, where two great powers have comparable capabilities to project force across the world's oceans. Now let's talk about the technology race and what comes next. The Type 004 and 005 carriers. Well, they represent current generation technology. But, as we all know, military development never really stops. Both China and the United States are already thinking about next-generation carriers that could, honestly, make today's supercarriers look obsolete. Future carriers might feature directed energy weapons, laser systems that can defend against missile swarms at literally the speed of light. They might also incorporate unmanned aircraft, which would extend operational range and reduce risk to pilots. Advanced electromagnetic railguns could even replace traditional ship-launched missiles for certain missions, and artificial intelligence might end up managing combat systems faster than any human operator could process information. China's rapid carrier development suggests they aren't just looking to match American capabilities, they're aiming to exceed them. The Type 004's higher reactor output is a hint at this ambition, since more electrical power means more capacity for future weapons systems that haven't even been invented yet. This sets up an action-reaction cycle that, frankly, is pretty familiar from Cold War history. America will respond to China's carrier expansion with its own naval modernization, and China will watch those American innovations and develop countermeasures. This technological competition is going to drive both nations to invest heavily in naval capabilities, reshaping defense budgets and industrial priorities along the way. But technology alone doesn't win wars or guarantee security. Operational competence, strategic wisdom, diplomatic skill, and ultimately, the willingness to avoid conflict through dialogue, these all matter just as much as hull numbers and weapon systems. The revelation that China has begun construction on a fifth carrier, the Type 005, while the fourth hasn't even launched yet, demonstrates an industrial commitment that few nations could match. Building two nuclear supercarriers simultaneously requires enormous coordination across thousands of suppliers, tens of thousands of workers, and countless technical specialties. Reports suggest the Type 005 will mirror the Type 004 in basic specifications. Over 100,000-ton displacement, 4 electromagnetic catapults, nuclear propulsion, and an air wing built around the J-35 stealth fighter and potentially sixth-generation aircraft like the J-36. The leaked model imagery shows a full-length, straight flight deck, a design that maximizes aircraft operations efficiency compared to the ski jump configurations used on earlier Chinese carriers. If both vessels commission on schedule, China could operate 5 carriers by 2030, 3 conventional and 2 nuclear, but intelligence projections suggest the carrier program won't stop there. Some estimates put China's eventual carrier fleet at 10 vessels, creating a two-ocean navy capable of sustained operations in both the Pacific and Indian Oceans simultaneously. This expansion serves notice that China's naval ambitions extend beyond regional defense. A 10-carrier fleet signals global power projection aspirations, the capability to influence events anywhere on Earth's oceans, from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean, from the Arctic to the Antarctic. The United States Navy faces a dilemma. It currently operates 11 carriers, but several are aging and will require replacement in coming decades. The Ford-class program has experienced delays and cost overruns, raising questions about the long-term affordability of maintaining an 11-carrier fleet. Meanwhile, American shipbuilding capacity has atrophied compared to its Cold War peak. The United States now operates far fewer shipyards with smaller workforces than in previous generations. This industrial decline means the U.S. cannot simply outbuild China in a naval arms race the way it outbuilt the Soviet Union. Instead, American strategy will likely focus on asymmetric advantages, superior submarine forces, more advanced aircraft, better trained crews, stronger alliance networks, and forward-basing agreements that position assets close to potential conflict zones. These advantages remain real, but they're not permanent. China is investing heavily in all these areas too. The competition ultimately comes down to resources, willpower, and strategic vision. Both nations face complex choices about how much naval power they need, what they're willing to pay for it, and whether military competition can be managed without escalating to actual conflict. Despite all the intelligence, satellite imagery, and leaked models, much about China's carrier program remains unknown. How reliable are the nuclear reactors? How effective are the electromagnetic catapults under combat stress? How skilled are Chinese carrier aviators at night operations, adverse weather landings, and coordinated strike missions? These questions matter because carrier operations are extraordinarily complex. It's one thing to build the hull and install the systems. It's another to operate them effectively under the chaos and danger of actual combat. The U.S. Navy has crashed planes, lost sailors, and learned hard lessons over decades of carrier operations. China will face similar learning curves. But underestimating China's ability to master these challenges would be foolish. They've consistently exceeded Western expectations in military technological development. The carrier program itself proves this. 10 years ago, most analysts thought China was decades away from nuclear propulsion. Today, they're building 2 nuclear supercarriers at once. We stand at an inflection point in naval history. For the first time since World War II, a rising power is building a carrier fleet that could challenge American maritime dominance. The Type 004 supercarrier symbolizes this shift. A vessel that didn't exist in Western war plans 5 years ago is now reshaping strategic calculations across the Pacific. This isn't just about China and America. Other nations are watching carefully, making their own decisions about naval investments, alliance commitments, and strategic positioning. India is expanding its carrier fleet. Japan is building helicopter carriers that could be converted to operate fixed-wing aircraft. Even smaller nations are investing in submarines and anti-ship missiles that could threaten carriers in littoral waters. The ocean domains that have been relatively peaceful since the end of the Cold War are becoming contested spaces again. Not necessarily hostile, but competitive. Multiple nations now possess or are acquiring the technology to project military power far from their shores.